Do you think someone's going to get hurt at all in this fight? And does
It
Kovalev,
could, man. Kovalev's such a big puncher. I would not be surprised.
Does Kovalev need to make this a dirty fight? Does he need to push the action in order to win the fight?
I don't know about dirty, but he needs to push the action.
Dirty meaning, in the trenches, in his face, against the ropes.
I think Sergey would want to keep him at the end of his punches. Sergey has, I believe, a 2.5-inch reach advantage, so I think he's going to want to keep him at his distance where he could really use his full power in his shots. I don't think he wants to fight Andre like this because I think that's more advantage to Andre because you can't throw with full power in here in this space, but if you're here you can, and I think Andre's gonna maybe want him a little bit close to be able to maul him and hold him and work on the inside.
So you're predicting the fight to go Andre Ward decision or split decision?
Yeah, I think he's gonna get a decision or a split decision. It's gonna be good, but I think it might be a slower paced fight given that he's done that with opponents that have been perceived as huge punchers before in the past. Abraham, Carl Froch, that's what he did with them. Even though with Carl Froch, he was able to beat him with one hand. He injured his hand, I think, on his forehead or something like that. But he did that in the past. So I think that he already has that logged in his head, and Andre's really going to start getting data first, second, third round, and then we'll see him start adjusting, and then we'll see what happens. But I think that he's going to win.
Now, boxing, as far as the undercard goes, a lot of people, these are not household names like a Kovalev or War, or even like MMA where they'll stack a card like 205.
Yeah, but now it's becoming rare with MMA. They used to stack it all the time, but now they're not stacking it as much.
But do you think that's boxing's mistake of not building these?
But you know what? It's also a thing of economics too. Andre Ward's base pay is $5 million. It's a lot, and then you factor in the cost of putting together the pay-per-view, the percentage they have to give away for distributing the pay-per-view to HBO. So it comes down to economics a lot of the times, and they can't afford to pay these other guys to come on the card because they're paying the main eventers so much money. So that's why sometimes the undercards suffer. We've seen it before with Canelo fought Mayweather. We had Garcia and Matisse. And the big complaint during that time that Richard Schaefer said was, man, we're spending a lot of money on this card, but hey, we're doing it. But I had to pay Matisse a lot of money. I had to pay Danny a lot of money for this fight. And I think the reason why the UFC is able to do it is because they don't pay their fighters as much. Now with 205, yeah, they had to shell out the money, but this is a big, huge event. This is the first time they did that. But with the addition of so many cards happening and the addition to that, they don't pay their fighters as much. They can afford to put these fighters that we perceive as big names on their cards, and they don't take a huge hit in terms of their overhead.
Well, with the Conor, just rounding out the MMA thing, is he wants equity right now.
That's not going to happen. There's no way.
I predict that he'll get.
I don't think so.
He's wanting $40 million around there.
He'll get the money. They'll pay him more, but to equity, no, because.
But do you think he'll get $40 million a fight? Because I broke down
you could, because if he asks for a bigger split pay-per-view wise, it could end up adding it if there's a lot of pay-per-view buys. I have no clue what he made for this fight. I heard that his base was $3 million, something like that. And then if you factor in whatever percentage,
maybe 10 to 15,
it could be that,
right.
The total payout and stuff like that. But in terms of equity, I don't see that happening, because then that gives all these other fighters precedent to ask for a percentage. And now they're in a position where they have to give all these percentages to everybody, because everybody's going to speak up and say, hey, I made you money too. I want a cut of the company.
But from a money standpoint, I'm saying 40 is what I'm predicting that he's going to make. Because I just broke down, if the gate makes $17 million and they did $2 million.
Yeah, but you got to understand too, the big part of that gate goes to the UFC. It doesn't go to Conor.
Right, but but in addition to that, you have the pay-per-views, which they could have made $100 million.
Yeah, they could have. But still, their side is a lot different. We don't know. This is all conjecture, how the percentage breakdowns. But what we do know from history is the UFC gets the biggest cut of the pot, and then everything else is to the fighters. So I could see him becoming the biggest paid in that sport.
Lorenzo Fertitta said he believes Conor's going to be the first $100 million man.
He could. Now, does he mean per fight, or does he mean earnings in total? We don't know. If it's earnings in total, I think so. But if he's going to make $100 million in one night, that has to be a huge fight. That's Mayweather type money And Mayweather only got to that payday because of Manny, and it did 4.6 million buys.
He did 300 million, I think, in that fight.
He made a ridiculous amount of money.
Last question. We caught up with Ray Boom Boom Mancini a few weeks back, and he's not one to mince words about what would happen. I think he even went on your show and broke down the whole Mayweather versus
the
Leonard
McGregor
Hearns
stuff.
But the thing that was interesting was Canelo. He brought up Canelo and Triple G, and he says that Canelo has the power to make the fight against Triple G, no matter. And I brought up Golden Boy. It's Golden Boy kind of shielding him from it. He's like, no, as a fighter, you could demand that fight. What are you hearing? Do you agree with that assessment?
I do, because say you own a business, all right, or say you call the shots. You call the shots. You could override your team and say, no, I want this to happen right now. With the Mayweather fight with Canelo, they were telling him, don't take the fight. I believe Oscar told him, don't take the fight. It's too early for you. Richard was like, no, take the fight. And he decided, you know what, I'm going to go ahead and take the fight. At the end of the day, it is the fighter that decides if they want to take a fight or not. Now, if they have a team with them, the team, of course, has their best interest in him and in themselves, too. They see this as a situation where maybe they think, hey, if we let it go a little bit longer, you could get 2 more fights. You make your quick 30 mil. That's 60 mil in the bank for you. Or I don't know, I'm just throwing out a number there. Why not make the most amount of money when we get to that fight? And then when that fight happens, you'll make a lot of money. You'll make a lot more, and if you had made now plus 2 paydays. So I think they're taking a look at that aspect. We're going to fight him, but why not get a few paydays in there before we fight him? Because there's a chance that you could lose that fight. And when you lose that fight, you could potentially take a cut in your earnings, even though he has it. And that's the thing that kind of ruffles my feathers. He lost to Mayweather, and he's still making these huge paydays. Even if he loses to Golovkin, granted, he doesn't get knocked out really bad, which I don't think he will, he's still going to make a lot of money. So he has the power to go, you know what, I want this fight. Let's go ahead and do it. So he does. I do agree with that opinion. At the end of the day, if you're calling the shots, you're the boss, you have the power to make something happen.
You're the first boxing reporter that I've heard that has said that. That right there is Marcos Villegas, Fight Hub TV. Thanks so much for coming on.
I appreciate it.
And much more fight coverage this week. And again, the fight Saturday, T-Mobile Arena, Sergey Kovalev versus Andre Ward to see who's pound for pound #1.